G'day and welcome to day 8 of the 30-day challenge. Today is a really exciting day because today we're moving into a new realm of understanding, and that's the 5 universal laws of nature and how to apply them to everyday life. In our conversation over the phone, we'll be going over this in great detail, but I thought putting up a little video to give you some preliminary information would be great. The key to the first law of nature, which is the law of balance, is mental stillness, focus, and making wise choices. And the first law of nature is simple. There's 2 sides to everything. Now, you'd think that would be the end of the story, wouldn't you? You'd think, well, yeah, there's 2 sides to everything, end of story. However, the identity and personality and ego that we all have, which is not our true nature, is made up of imbalanced thoughts. So all our beliefs of what's right and wrong, all our sense of identity, that I'm good at this and not good at that, all of the things that we construct to make ourselves a worldly human being, including romance, by the way. Romance is basically saying that there's more good in you than bad. Motivation in a company is basically saying there's more pleasure than pain in the future. So you can see that the world is constructed, totally constructed, out of a model of imbalanced thinking. And yet, the whole universe can't function out of balance. There's not a second in your life where you have more pleasure than pain. And you might think that it's more pleasure than pain, but the truth will be that you'll find out that the pain was accumulating, or that the person you're talking to wasn't totally square with you, or that you were infatuated. You only saw the good news and you didn't see the bad news. So this business of being, let's say, out of balance is human. It's natural. It's automatic. But unfortunately, it leads us to all our pain and suffering, and it leads us to a huge amount of poor decision making. So let's just run through a few things that might help you here to avoid the mental illnesses, the lost focus, and the unwise choices that come from imbalanced thinking, and yet live in the world where unbalanced thinking and lopsided thinking is what people call reality. There's an event, and if you just see an event, let's say, as a good example, a friend loses $100,000 on a business deal. There is no charge. It's just a fact. A friend lost $100,000 on a business deal. If I don't know that person, if it's a long-range connection to that person, I have very little challenge about it. If that person's my partner, or if it's me, I'll either say, I lost 100,000, well, that's good, that'll teach me never to do that again, or I'll rationalize it somehow, or I'll go into trauma and go, oh crap, that's bad news, and I'll go into depression, or I'll go into reaction and get angry about it. Now, the fact of the matter is, it was just an event. We charged it. We gave it either a positive spin, saying it was great, or we gave it a negative spin, saying it was crappy. So this leads to the idea of just being conscious of being in reaction to life or in action with life. Now, reaction means that you see it as either a positive or a negative. It leads to you being disturbed. It leads to, definitely, the more reaction you're in and the more polarized you see the world, let's say you say that's extremely bad or this is extremely good, you get shorter and shorter term thinking. And the more extreme those polarities are, the shorter the term, the more you seek gratification, and you get way off track in your life. But you think that eating that cream cake, for example, is something you really need to do. You do it, but then about a week later you wish you hadn't, or a couple of months later after after more cream cakes. It makes a person extremely emotionally driven. So you'll hear that person say, I've got to get to work, you should do this and shouldn't do that, or you need to do this, or I need to do that. And those 3 words, got to, should, and need to, form the basis of the reactive mindset. So we need to be mindful not to repeat those words in our daily dialogue. If we hear ourselves saying, I've got to get to the bus, I have to get to the washing done, I should do this and I shouldn't do that, or I need to do this and I need to do that, those things are triggering in you the chemistry of failure. So they might be driving you toward what you think is success, but the chemicals they're producing in your body are biologically destructive, and they will lead to illness and physiological breakdown, or they'll lead to, for example, if you say, I've got to help this client do a great job, that language in itself will lead to the client not valuing what you give them, because got to is a polarized mindset. If you polarize to this is great, you'll drive somebody into the polarized position of no, it's not. There's as I said, there's law of balance says there's two sides to everything. If you take one side, you automatically trigger people into the other side. And this is a great skill to understand in negotiation, because if you come in all infatuated with your product, or totally geared up, and you say, I've got it right, I've got it right, I've got it right, or I've got a product that everybody will love, what will happen is that people will swing to the other side of the fence and say, I disagree. It's not good, it's not perfect, and you'll find with a product like Apple, they never claim to be the greatest, they never claim to be the grandest or the biggest and the best. What they're always saying, it works. And so they're trying to find that middle ground of the consciousness of the buyer. And yet there are buyers out there who are in desperate place, reactive buyers. So they're the people who buy the TV exercise bike, but they don't buy the exercise bike on one positive feature. They will say, here's a positive feature of an exercise bike, plus you get a video, plus you get a set of Stape Sharp knives, plus you get interest-free terms, and they keep going until they get around an imbalance between the negative and the positive of 7-to-1. 7-to-1 is extremely reactive, and for those people who are in desperation or reactive mindset, a extreme polarized position is a 7-to-1 ratio of positives to negatives, or negatives to positives. And that's a whole, I would say, 80% of the target market of mass consciousness. So if you're marketing to the masses, you need to list up at least 7 benefits to every one negative that could be perceived about your product. However, if you're selling to someone of much higher awareness, who's not so desperate, who's got a little more comfort zone, whose decision making is not based around got to and the immediate present, and they're thinking a little long term. The longer term that person's thinking, the less you need to give them benefit and drawback. So the more inclined you'd be to say is this is a good product and it works, and so there's one benefit. And the drawback is in their mind, well, it's going to cost me. So you'd just be giving them 1-to-1. So the closer you get to 1-to-1 in terms of benefit drawback, the closer you get to unconditional love. And that's a funny thing, because a business consultant and someone doing this work starts talking about unconditional love. You think, what have I bought into? But the bottom line is that wherever there's balance, there's love. So if you see balance in something, you see love in it. And whenever you see out of balance, you think it's love. And so, for example, people get infatuated into a relationship thinking their partner's all good. And after 12 months, they find, well, they're good and bad. And the infatuation turns to resentment because they didn't expect the downside. And if they stick in it long enough and stick at the relationship long enough for another bunch of years, what they'll find is the good news balances the bad news. And that's the definition of a relationship: support and challenge. Of course, that's not romantic. And there are tricks and games and things we do to trigger romance and infatuation in order to enjoy sexual and physical sensory pleasures with a person. But the bottom line, the real love, the unconditional love that sticks long after the relationship has worn out, or even long after the romance has fizzled, the thing that keeps it and sustains it is unconditional love, the idea of balance in everything. So it causes disempowerment, it triggers the pleasure-pain paradigm, where I'm going to have more pleasure than pain, and it leads to depression, because elation, everything's going to be great, leads to depression, oh crap, it's not. Flipping to the other side, the more balance we see, the more we apply this law of nature, the two sides to everything in nature, the more we see that we stay in action. The decisions we make will be made on, not on this will be a great result and that will be a bad result. It will be based on there'll be good and bad outcomes to this decision. Therefore, on that basis of a completely ambivalent result, I either choose to do it because it serves my purpose, or choose to do it because it makes money, or choose to do it. But I don't get deluded that my decision has an all upside, or I don't run away from a decision because it has an all downside. That's delusion. So there's action, there's focus. Now, emotion is the opposite to focus. All emotion is lopsided thinking, which sends the mind into overload and takes us off track. So we can say that the single greatest cause of lost concentration, lost motivation, lost inspiration is lopsided thinking. So balanced thinking is really important. Balanced thinking also makes you think long term. So when you're going through something and you go, what will I eat today? What will I exercise today? What will I do today? If you're infatuated, it will last a week and then you'll lose it, and that's a guarantee. If you've got balanced thinking, this is good and bad, but I'll do it anyway, it will be sustainable. And this is one of the things that motivators need to understand, is that they're the high maintenance self-management process they trigger by engaging people in the idea that the future will be all good is fraught with disappointment, because the future is not all good. The future is good and bad, but the future might be in alignment with that individual's value set. And that's what we're trying to do here, is say, if you have a value that you want to be healthy, there's good and bad news along the way, but if you can link everything you do to that value, you'll go through the good and bad on the way to it. It will sustain you. If it's not one of your values, you'll have to infatuate yourself, and that will lead to trouble. So it leads to long-term, absolute love, unconditional. It's very empowering, puts a person on purpose rather than on pleasure-pain paradigm, and it leads to vision manifestation. So when we don't turn up, it means that we've got a lopsided perception. We don't turn up. So our partner that's supposed to be working side by side with us in relationship or business or whatever actually takes a bit of a space, because we're not there. And they give us space in order for us to have our emotional swings. And when they do that, we typically move over toward them, and then they become the satellite around which we gravitate. It's like the sun. The moon goes around the sun, but if we infatuate, or if we don't turn up, if we don't focus ourselves, and we don't have a purpose bigger than ourselves, then instead of being the sun around which the moon rotates, we become the moon, and we start rotating around another person. Their decisions influence us. Their decisions take us on or off track, and as a result of that, we lose our power. And then we start to gravitate down into self-deprecation, negativity. Instead of being positive about the future, we become negative about it, we become ungrateful, and we start being desperate. So really important in this whole thing is to learn how to actually arrive in your power. And arriving in your power is not being better than someone or worse than someone, is actually saying, I'm no better or worse than somebody else, but I have balance and focus, and I have a purpose. It's Chris Walker, and that's my teaching. So it's very simple. We do a clearing up the past process. Now, we do this every day on the way home from work. In the positive column here, you see, you write everything I did well today. And in the next column, the second column, you write, what are the drawbacks of all the things I did well? In the third column, you write, what are the things that I could have done better today? And the fourth column is, what are the benefits of not having done them well? In other words, what we're saying is every day is balance, and before we arrive home and bring home our compensations and bring home all our imbalances from work and our perception that we did good or bad, before we arrive home and use our family as the laundry through which we wash our imbalanced thinking, what we do is we stop in the car, pull out this form. It must be written, it can't be guessed at, and it needs to be written down every single day between work and home. And that's what I recommend to my clients, is to stop the car or do it on the bus or go somewhere and just make notes. And it usually is about 10 or 15 things you did well, 10 or 15 things you've got to be equal, 10 or 15 things you could have done better. Find the drawbacks of the things you did well, the benefit of the things you did not so well. So the ultimate realization, how do we know if we're off track or on track when it comes to the first law of nature, the balance law? And the simple answer is this: we'll have a balanced mind, we'll have a centered body. So if our body is operating, if we've got body pain or we've got body misalignment, and we're not centered in our navel, then we know we've lost stillness, we know we've lost balance in our mind. And the last one is calm of nerves. Now, if our nervous system is engaged, that's fantastic, but if it's trembling, or if it's depressed, or if it's exhausted, we know that our mind has gone out of balance, our body is not centered, and the nervous system is a reflection of it. And they are three really important things to understand and to have a measure in life as to whether you're on or off track. Balanced mind, centered body, calm nerves.